Hello guys, what's happening? It's me here. Today I want to talk about the subject about is there going to be more dyslexics now than there were in the past? And is there going to be more dyslexics in the future? And I want to answer this because the answer to this question is more interesting than what people think. Because a lot of people I think the answer is either no or yes. But it's a bit more complex than that. And I think answering this question would give a good idea about their status of a better understanding about what actually is dyslexia and the difference between what it actually is and diagnosing with it, if that makes sense, guys. So I hope you enjoy today's episode and we're jumping right in. So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. So guys, let's answer the question: is there more dyslexics now than there has been in the past? And like I said, the answer to this is quite interesting when we dive deeper in it, because if you look at what actually is dyslexia. Now, when I say what actually is dyslexia, I mean the core root of it. The core root of it is a neurodiversity. And what a neurodiversity is when your brain is wired differently than other people. So much so that it comes under a name of neurodiverse. So I think of it like a spectrum. Like 60% of the population goes into this sector called neurotypical. You're just you could be just neurotypical enough to not have a label like dyslexia, ADHD, autism, or these other things, depending on who you see and who's your doctor or whoever. But then there's other spectrum, other thing. When you cross the 60% mark, when you go into the 40%, it can be considered neurodiverse. Now that can be very mild or very severe on all these different ends and all these different spectrums and all these different labels. And dyslexia is just one part of them. It's a big part because 20% of the population is it. And so if you look at, this is dyslexia. Dyslexia is something that's neurodiverse. That's a large percentage of the population has it. And it comes under all these characteristics of learning how to read, learning how to spell, with phonics, with remembering, with organization, with all these other little characteristics of dyslexia. So, that's dyslexia. But then there's the whole other conversation of diagnosing a dyslexic. For that to happen, a lot of stuff needs to happen, a lot of legislation, a lot of, let's say, laws, because there's one thing being diagnosed with dyslexia and another thing being recognized for it. Does that make sense? Because I could know that I'm dyslexic, but then I could be put into the education system, just knowing I'm dyslexic without knowing how to deal with it in the education system, in somewhere that dyslexia is not recognized, and yet I'll be treating completely differently. Therefore, the people who are born, there's billions and billions of people in certain countries that dyslexia isn't as well recognized or as well understood. Now, does that mean that there's less dyslexics in those countries where dyslexia is less understood? Let's say in the UK and in some parts of America, 20% of the population, or a lot less than 20% of the population is diagnosed, but it's suspected to be about 20% of the population is dyslexic. Let's say, I can't remember the stats, but a lot less. I think maybe 5% or so people in the UK and education system are getting diagnosed with dyslexia. I think they'll get more and more and more and more. But yet, in other countries, let's say I'm in Thailand or in other countries, where the education isn't as advanced or let's say progressed, the stats for that would be a lot less. Let's say below the 1%, way below, 0.01%, or something like that. That getting diagnosed with dyslexia, does that mean that there's that only 0.01 dyslexics? No, there's still the same number of neurotypical people, neurodiverse dyslexics out there. It's just they haven't been diagnosed yet. They haven't been seen for what it is, and there's a couple reasons for that. Biggest one definitely is the fact that there's the fact that dyslexia is not recognised as big. You know what I mean? And it's not as well understood. And that's the biggest one. But then that can come down to, like, one other reasons could be because of the way they use language. English is really bad for dyslexics because it's got so many individual parts and individual symbols, like letters. But because, like, with like Chinese and other things, and Chinese is a lot harder to diagnose dyslexics because they can read and write better than people who are learning English. The reason for this is that with Chinese language, I think for other languages as well. I know Chinese, but I think the other languages focus on symbols, same as well as Thai. So more correlation is that their symbols are in like, it's more like a blocks. It's like a block. It's like one little square is a word. A square, and there's all these little symbols like a little drawing, like more of an image. With English, it's not really images, it's just single letters, like letter after letter after letter. But with Chinese and other languages, it's a block. And we find as dyslexics, that's easier to deal with because it's more 3D, it's more, we can feel it, we can touch it, it's more, like we can visualize it better. So that's one of the reasons why the way they cope. Because remember, guys, I spoke about this before in the past, is that before dyslexia, so dyslexia's been around all the time. You know, I mean, it's been part of our evolution as a human species. We don't know how far back, but we know it's from the thousands and thousands of years. And it's like been passed around through generation to generation. But we only knew about dyslexia like 130, 140 years ago, mainly because of, people found there was differences, but because of the invention of something called the printing press, basically printing texts in a large format so that they can be delivered to schools. And then they noticed about why basically a good percentage of people can't learn to read, but they can do so many other good tasks. Why isn't that? And they label the word blindness and dyslexia. But so dyslexia only got found out because of what they cannot do, which is reading within English, basically. So because it started off here. Anyway, I don't want to get into that in this talk. I just want to talk about like the conversations. So basically, the answer is no. There is not more dyslexics now than there has been, but there will seem like there is. But because eventually, over time, over the years and over the decades, as education can become more and more widely known and more better practiced, there are people with neurodiversities, with different learning styles. And people like dyslexia have a radically different learning style. And we would treat that more better because at the moment, people with dyslexics still get called a label, like where I am in Thailand or anywhere else in the world. If they don't have the label for dyslexia, for someone who's dyslexic, they would have a label of something else, like dumb, stupid, low, unfocused, quiet, shy, or all these other things that we've been probably called in my life. I know I've been called in my life, and other people have been called in their life as reasons for why they're not learning. So the most accurate one we have is that they're dyslexic. Now, that's not a reason for them to not learn. That's just a reason for them to learn differently than other people. And learning that, we can kind of understand that, okay, what is dyslexia and what is getting diagnosed? Because also diagnosing and also the treatment. Treatment for dyslexia, because the biggest thing, has to be a lot of understanding and money. Because with dyslexia, treating dyslexia takes a lot more time, a lot more effort, and a lot more specialized practitioners. You know what I mean? Like specialized, because like let's say you go to school to become a teacher. You go to university, you get qualified and become a teacher for many years, and then you're qualified to teach neurotypicals in the neurotypical way, because most of education is designed by neurotypicals to teach neurotypicals. But dyslexics aren't like that. Dyslexics are diverse, they get taught differently. So that means these people who are already educated in teaching neurotypicals has to be educated further, and you know what I mean, a lot more years, a lot more money, a lot more this into educating dyslexics. Now, is that good? Is that the best way? No. Do I think it should change? Yes. Is it going to change anytime soon on a big scale? No. No, it isn't. And one thing's like I say over and over again, and I remember I wrote it in my book as one big step of conquering dyslexia is that don't wait, that the world won't change for you. You have to change for the world. It's not about like here sitting ourselves, conquering ourselves dyslexia. Obviously learning about it is really good. And why making these informational videos is one, get a good idea of dyslexia, and two is just sort of like learning about it. Learning about, okay, this is what dyslexia is, this is how I can use it. But what I want us to realize is that more than anything is that like the world is massive, and I think a lot of times we can be very, very like short-sighted. Like people in England think the education system is bad. People in America think that their education system is bad. For people with dyslexia and neurodiversity, yes, it is. But it's way much more good way much more better that knowing that dyslexia is a problem and knowing what you need to do to have early interventions, to have funding, to have that, compared to being with the problem where going like, we need to recognize dyslexia more. Does that make sense? It's like, I want to relate it to people, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot better, times a lot better now for people with colour compared to slavery. I don't want to get into all that. But what I'm saying is like, we always focus on the problem, but you have to realise the quality of problem is getting better and better and better. And we got to realise that some other people, like, we think things so bad now, like, or where we are here, but like 100 years ago it's a lot worse, or at someone else on the planet it's a lot more worse. No, that's not to take the fact that we shouldn't fight and we shouldn't push for change. It's just that there is a long way to go to get things correct. And when I say when things are correct, I mean correct by the understanding that dyslexia is neurodiversity. I think that eventually we should get to a point where dyslexia is just so commonly known and so commonly understood that we don't have to go through this long process of getting diagnosed with dyslexia. We just have to go through a process of going, okay, is this how you learn? Is this how you think? Okay, we'll teach you in this way. And it shouldn't be, okay, you're dyslexic, therefore we must give you so much more funding and so much more like practice time and attention. But if you're dyslexic, okay, you just move over here with this other different way of learning. Not this other different way of learning that would be a lot more expensive for the schools, for the government. It'll just be different. And that's it. And I think over time, when the strategy become more and more better and the education for the teachers become more and more better and the understanding of dyslexia becomes more and more better, that they're just different learning styles, and it's completely accepted and it's completely seen for the strengths. Because if you're known there, we can teach towards their strengths, and the kids with dyslexia can be seen as more of people who have strengths, and that can be kind of guided towards more fields that involve their mind strengths. Like architecture, business, and all these other things that dyslexia would be really good at. So guys, I hope we kind of made a bit more sense, or kind of like enlightened thinking, oh, I never really thought about this question, but his answer does make a lot of sense, and about the differences between what is dyslexia and getting diagnosed with dyslexia and getting the help and support for that. And I really hope we kind of looked at it and thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. And guys, I'm quite excited with what I'm doing at the moment, because I know we just finished this project about learning to read with dyslexia. I still got a few more episodes to do about that, so a few more parts, but I want to do them with other people too, so I'll get a bit more experience and deliver like a lot more value, to be honest, with that. But the offer still stands to give me a call. Schedule a call with a 30-minute call. They've been going great. I've been loving them, and just chatting, seeing how I can help you in all these different ways. So, and also something else I'm really excited about is like, so with Instagram, I got this Instagram. I had one Instagram, well, I still have it, but now I use it more as a personal one. And I've created this Conquering Dyslexia Instagram, a bit more of a business professional one. But I really want to like revamp that and completely restart it into, this will be in a couple of days, maybe in a week's time I'll do it, into a completely new like Conquering Dyslexia Instagram, where it's like the whole goal of it, no matter who you are, it helps people on the journey. It's crystal clear and it's crystal precise, and it offers so much more value. So anyway, guys, you'll be hearing about that in the near future. and I'm excited for the things. I hope we're doing well. Take care, guys, and bye.